We're at the old Mackinac Point Lighthouse in Mackinac City, Michigan. And to the left of it, you see the Mackinac Bridge. And there it is. Old Mackinac Point Lighthouse, established 1889. It helped passing ships navigate through the treacherous waters of the Straits of Mackinac. So we're going to go in and see what it's all about. Entrance this way. So we're kind of looking at the back of it right now. So if you come in the parking lot, it's best to park over to this side, to the far right. So that's closest to the entrance. Entrance, Old Mackinac Point Lighthouse, admission tickets and museum store. There'll be exhibits, tower tours, the shipwreck museum, and shopping. It has a really scenic location. It's right here on the edge of Lake Huron. It's open 9 to 5. The store is open to 5:30 p.m. And you can see how close we are to the shore. When you walk in, you're in a gift shop area, and this is where you buy your tickets. As of now, a day ticket for an adult is $10.25. A child 5 to 12 years old is $7.25. And you can even get season passes. There's also multi-site combo tickets that include different attractions in the area. There's Mackinac Bridge souvenirs, some guidebooks, there's hats and visors, sweatshirts, puzzles, a lot of things to do with the whole Mackinac area. And they offer guided tours of the tower, and we're going to go on the one at 10:30. Says you must be 48 inches tall to climb the tower.
So if you want to head inside there, we'll meet you inside in just a minute.
Okay. And we're inside the lighthouse structure right now. Shows keeper's quarters to the left, and exhibits and tower to the right. Right there is the old Mackinac Point's lens. They do offer the guided tours, but if you don't want to go on one of those, you can walk around and show yourself around the lighthouse. But if you want to walk to the top of the lighthouse, you have to go on a tour.
And you have to have tennis shoes. You cannot wear flip-flops or sandals.
Okay. You have to have good shoes on.
You're back there. Cameras, phones, anything that fits in your pocket is good to go up. William's just gonna head up there first.
I'll see you folks upstairs.
Yeah, he'll meet you up there for the other half of the tour. My name is Tyler. I'm one of the historical interpreters here. Before we go up the tower, we'll talk just a little bit about the history of this site and why it's here. So in 1892, they finished construction on Old Mackinac Point Lighthouse. They commissioned it because if you go over to McGulpin Point Lighthouse, which is just a couple miles that way, that is originally out here on the Straits of Mackinac, and you can't actually see the light out here on the Lake Huron side of the Straits. So the Lighthouse Board decided to build another lighthouse, which is the one you're currently standing in, and they kind of overcorrected for that mistake because the light at the top of the tower can be seen on both the Lake Huron and the Lake Michigan sides of the Straits. So McGulpin Point Lighthouse is out of commission for the duration of the time that Old Mackinac Point is in service. It is currently a private aid to navigation and open as a museum as well if you're interested in going over there. But Old Mackinac Point Lighthouse has one job. It is to tell people to stay away. If you look out on the water, it's a little bit easier to see when you're up there. There's a color change between the light blue and the dark blue water. That light blue is something called a sandy shoal, or just a big giant sandbar that wraps around the tip of northern Michigan here. So ships could very easily cut off too early as they're entering the Straits of Mackinac and beach wreck in those sandbars, which is really bad for the shipping business. So Old Mackinac Point Lighthouse is doing its job to tell people to stay away, and during its whole about 60-year run, there's no accidents where ships wreck on the shoals. Not that there aren't shipwrecks during its tenure, but they are related to other accidents, whether the ship caught on fire or there were collisions, things that couldn't necessarily be prevented by the lighthouse. Now, it's doing this job in just a couple of different ways. One of those ways is the daymark, which is the physical appearance of the lighthouse. Old Mackinac Point looks like a castle on the streets with the cream brick. It also has a black lantern room and a red roof. So as the sailors pass through here, they know that this building is Old Mackinac Point. One of the other ways that they do that is with the light that's up in the tower. Each lighthouse has its own distinct flashing pattern and sometimes a different color. Originally, Mackinac Point Lighthouse has a red light. You can see that original red chimney there that would have altered the color of the light that was being sent through the lens. It eventually gets turned to a white light in 1913, but it also flashes for 10 seconds, 6 times a minute, which is another way during the nighttime when you can't see the physical building how sailors would know that this is old Mackinac Point Lighthouse. Any questions so far? I know I throw a lot
I
at
do.
you.
On that, they must have had a journal or something that was published that would have the signal for each lighthouse?
They would have had something that would have told them which lighthouses in their region would have been what signal, what, because flag signals and also eventually radio towers are also ways that you can determine vaguely where you're at on your journey out here on the Great Lakes or along the ocean coast. Any other questions? Great question. All right, now we're going to begin our journey up the tower. I'm not going to follow with you, but I will give you some safety precautions. As you go up the tower, we request that you hold onto the handrail the entire time. Please do not stop in the tower to take pictures. I know it's very tempting, but we don't want to cause a traffic jam or anything. So just make your way up. There are plenty of opportunities to take pictures in the watch room and the lantern room. When you get to the top of the staircase, there will be a yellow step. When you reach that step, you are going to duck. That is where the overhang is. So you don't want to hit your head. All right, so when we get to the yellow painted step, we're going to duck. All right, awesome. You ready to go up? Enjoy the tower.
Okay, folks.
Okay, here's where you duck.
Duck.
Oh, you do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Careful that it doesn't hit your back.
Yeah, I was gonna say, watch your back too. Good to see everybody made it up safely. That's good. Watch your head, folks. Okay, folks. So welcome to our watch room today. If anyone would like to have a seat in the chair, by the way, we do have a chair available.
Yes, and some of the elevator.
Alrighty.
Okay.
Plus it helps with the room a little bit. That way,
Okay.
everyone's not bunched up. So, welcome to the watch room. My name is William. I'm the other lighthouse interpreter here. And what I'll be talking to you folks about today is what they did here in this room, but also what the day-to-day operations of the lighthouse keeper were actually like. So, the room we're in right now, as I mentioned, is the watch room. This is where the lighthouse keeper and assistant keeper would have conducted their watch. So they were up here from sunset to sunrise, watching over that light and making sure that light remained visible for all ships to see. Now the lighthouse keeper and the assistant keeper kind of being like an apprentice who would work under the lighthouse keeper and kind of learn the ropes and become a keeper in their own right. Those two people would work in shifts. So while one person was up here, the other one was downstairs getting some sleep. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly how long their shifts would have been, but we know they would have switched places throughout the night. So to kind of go through what a typical evening watch would have been, in the early days when our lighthouse was first built in 1892, we had an oil lamp up here in the tower. And what that basically was it was fueled by kind of like a pig lard or a pig fat. The keeper would have climbed up those very spiral stairs that you folks just walked up, carrying a little bucket of fuel. They would carefully pour that fuel into a reservoir up in the lantern room, which is basically a fuel tank. And then that would lead into a wick. The wick was made of a flammable material that fuel would go into. You would light that with your match, that created your flame, and that flame was your light source. Now the keeper, throughout the evening, would have had to keep that wick constantly trimmed. What that basically means is that it's gonna burn nice and clean, because you don't want it to create any soot or ash. And I'll get into why in just a minute. The problem with the pig lard lamp was it was very inefficient. Really wasn't good at operating. So in 1913 they switched to kerosene, and they had a kerosene lamp up here. If you've ever gone camping and have brought a Coleman lantern with you, it's the exact same thing, just bigger. So they would have had to bring kerosene up those stairs. The reason they didn't store fuel up here is because that's a big fire hazard. Instead, the oil and kerosene would have been stored in a separate structure entirely. It's that kind of circular shed you might have saw by our shipwreck museum. That is where the oil and kerosene would have been stored when it wasn't being used. But they still had to trim a wick even with the kerosene lamp, but the kerosene lamp was more efficient. Didn't burn as much fuel. Then in 1929, they switched to electricity, and that would have changed the game completely up here, because that meant no more fuel they had to bring up, no more wick they had to trim. All they had to do was keep that light bulb going, making sure it didn't go out. That being said, they did have more responsibilities here at the site at that point. In the 1920s, they installed a weather station out in the middle of the property where the keeper would keep track of weather movements here. They also would have maintained a ship-to-shore radio after 1937 to basically warn the ships of any weather problems or any traffic problems here in the Straits of Mackinac. Also, they could use it in an emergency if a ship did wreck off the point here. But as Tyler, I'm sure, mentioned to you folks, no ships ever wrecked out here at Old Mackinac Point, so we were good at our job. So that kind of emergency situation really didn't come up here. Now, all three of the lights we had up here would have been housed inside what they call a Fresnel lens. And what a Fresnel lens basically does is it takes beams of light and it bends them, a lot like a prism or a crystal does, so it kind of works like a magnifying glass. This allows our light to be seen much farther away. Our light could be seen 16 miles away, thanks to that Fresnel lens. Now the keeper would have had to constantly keep that lens nice and clean. You might be able to see the original lens is actually downstairs. It's the one in the room by itself with the white light. Originally, when they first built the lighthouse, inside would have been a red light, but it got confused with another lighthouse. So in 1913 or 14, that red light was removed and they just had where it was a white light. The other distinguishing mark with our light was that the lens would rotate, as a lot of Fresnel lenses did at other lighthouses, but where ours differed was on the lens there were these circular panels called flash panels, and this was so our light could flash every 10 seconds. And that's so the ship captains know which lighthouse it was. Now, in order to get the lens to rotate in the days before electricity, they had to use a system very similar to a grandfather clock or a cuckoo clock. So they had a large metal weight that went down this shaft right here. It was connected to a metal chain, which would have came up through that loop right there. Then it would angle off and go through the T-shaped hole in the floor here. Then it would wrap around a gear, and that gear was attached to the lens. So what would happen is as that weight is slowly way down the shaft, fed by gravity, that's slowly unwinding that chain. So you just would have heard a ch-ch-ch-ch-ch up there. Sounded like something unwinding, and that would slowly turn the lens. It took about 5 hours for the weight to reach the bottom of the tower. Once it did, the lighthouse keeper or assistant keeper, whoever was up here at the time, would have climbed up this ladder here. There was a little box of gears with a hand crank on the outside, and they would have to hand crank that weight all the way back.
Wow.
Eventually in 1940, the weight system was replaced by a motor, and they had a motor rotating the lens. Any questions about any of that? All right, so if there's one big takeaway I want you folks to have from our tower tour, Don't worry, we will be going up in the lantern room. If there's one big takeaway I want you folks to have, it's that a lighthouse keeper did a lot of work here. It was a very busy job. Now they didn't work here alone, as I mentioned before. We had the assistant keeper here. We also had their families here to help them out. The lighthouse keeper and his family lived on the eastern side of the building downstairs, and the assistant keeper and his family lived on the western side of the building downstairs. So everyone did their part and worked together to keep this place up and running. Well, if you folks are ready, I think we'll go up in the lantern room and take a look at a few things up there. So if you don't want to go up the ladder, you don't have to. You just want to wait down here. We're all going to head down the stairs together as a group. But if you do wish to go up the ladder, what you're going to do is hold on to the sides of the ladder like this. Take it one step at a time, one person on the ladder at a time. Make sure you don't skip this final step right here. It's very easy to skip this last step. So just be careful, folks. So, we're in probably the most important room of the lighthouse. This is the lantern room. Now I know what you're thinking, well, when the light bulb was in here, it wasn't really a lantern room, but that's kind of the tradition, what they call it. It's just like my dad's a firefighter. They still call the firehouse the barn, and that's hearkening back to the days of when they had horses pulling fire trucks. So it's kind of the same thing here, just names stick. Up here in the center of the room, they would have had the light on a pedestal. That Fresnel lens would have been about the height from the bottom to the top of the windows. The diameter of the lens was about, actually, better show it this way, it was about this big. So it took up quite a bit of space. They did not have these railings here when it was in service, but they did have this trap door here that they could lower down over this. So that would give them a full floor to walk all the way around. This door here leads out to our catwalk outside, which is used to clean the windows. You'll also notice on each corner of the room these brass circles here. And they have 4 little triangles cut into them. These allowed oxygen to come in, and that was to keep the flame going on the oil and kerosene lamp, because flames need oxygen to stay lit. When they were ready to snuff out the light in the morning, they would turn this knob, and the idea is it would turn, and that would cover up the holes, snuffing out the flame on its own, saving you fuel. The fumes from the oil and kerosene lamp would have been vented out through that hole there, and you'll notice on all the lighthouses they have that little ball on top of the tower. Well, right underneath that ball, there's a little ring, which you can't really see it from here because it's indented, but there's little holes, and that's where those fumes come out. So you would see probably like a little bit of haze or smoke towards the top, and that's what's going on, is them exhausting those fumes.
Okay.
The final thing I'll point out, at least in this room, is you'll notice that these canvas sheets on the rear windows, these would have gone over all the windows in the daytime, and that was to protect the Fresnel lens from sunlight. Sunlight could actually damage the lens over time. There was a special glue or caulking they used to keep the glass pieces together, and if it was exposed to sunlight, it would begin to crack, which could destroy the lens. So they had these over the windows to protect the lens. The original Fresnel lens is still here at the lighthouse. It's actually downstairs. It's the one in the room by itself with the white light. Now in 1957, this lighthouse was taken out of service when the Mackinac Bridge was completed. Both towers on the Mackinac Bridge are 552 feet tall. The bridge is 5 miles long and is covered in large lights across its entire length. So it can be seen much farther away than the lighthouse ever could. Now, would anyone like their picture taken while they're up here?
Yeah,
All right, I can do that for you real quick.
I'm gonna need proof.
Exactly. You're going to grab onto the sides of the ladder, like this. And you're just going to take it one step at a time, and just remember, one person on the ladder at a time.
Entire bridge.
Well, yeah, here in Michigan. So I actually don't
Such a
live up
great
here.
view from up here. Wow.
Here in the summer.
Awesome.
So I
Did you get some picture too and not just video?
What you're going to want to do is there are two ways to safely go down these steps. You can either head down backwards, and then once you get under this, you're going to turn around and head down forwards. Or what I personally like to do is head down the whole way forward. Once you get to this, you're going to act like you're going to sit on the step, scoot right under, and then stand back up. But do whatever makes you feel more comfortable. Thank you so much for listening to me and Tyler's tour today. I hope you learned something, and most of all, I hope you had fun. Thank you folks so much for coming, and I'm glad you folks had a great time here today.
Good job.
Yes, thank you.
folks.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Make sure you give one to Tyler as well.
Yeah.
Sure will.
If it moves, maybe it does, but I don't really know something.
If you want to go up this little landing room, you do have to get through this little your visit.
This wide.
Thank you, Tyler.
And I had to
You
get
did a
through
great
that.
job. Well, that was a great tour. What did you think about that, Donna?
That was great.
That was. There's a lot of exhibits here that tell you how a lighthouse worked, how the lens worked, and the lives of the lighthouse keepers.
The light at the top of the 50-foot tower of Old Mackinac Point Light Station helped guide mariners safely through the Straits of Mackinac. Several times each day and night throughout the 10-month navigation season, the lightkeeper climbed 4 stories.
In this exhibit, you can watch and listen with this and get a tour of the lighthouse. Old Mackinac Point Light Station was called the Castle on the Straits. In its 65-year history, 4 principal and 14 assistant keepers served at Old Mackinac Point, and they had a lot of duties, cleaning, scrubbing, and polishing, as well as operating the lighthouse. Some light stations used regular cannon firings to send audible warnings. Some had bells. Steam whistle. Diaphragm horn. Wow. Diaphone horn.
That's what you're used to.
That's really cool. And there was an upstairs to the keeper's dwelling. These are some of the keepers and their families. George and Maggie, George Marshall,
They never had children of their own.
Margaret Marshall. Life at Old Mackinac Point. Every day the light station buzzed with activity. As keeper, George cleaned and maintained the light, fog signal equipment, and buildings and grounds. All tasks his family may have assisted with. Love the view from here. There's the outside of the lighthouse. Lighthouse is a big, tall tower right on the edge of Lake Huron. We were up there.